Emily Carter had never thought one ordinary evening could feel so heavy. She had lived in Portland for 8 years, long enough to know its weather, its rhythm, its quiet corners. Yet that night felt different. It felt like something was missing. Not something big like a life change, but something small and personal. Like the warmth of a conversation, or the comfort of a familiar voice. She stood in her small apartment, staring at the soft glow of the lamp beside her couch, wondering why her chest felt tight, why her thoughts felt louder than usual, why loneliness seemed to be sitting beside her in the empty room. The feeling wasn't dramatic, but it was heavy enough to push her toward the door. She slipped into her coat, grabbed her bag, and walked out, hoping movement would chase away the stillness inside her. Outside, the winter air brushed her cheeks with a sharp coldness that felt strangely refreshing. The streets glowed under the streetlights, and cars passed quietly, almost respectfully, as if the whole city understood she needed a gentle night. Emily had always been someone who carried quiet emotions. She didn't show them easily, but she felt them deeply. Tonight, they were louder than ever, nudging her forward with a restless urging she couldn't ignore. The cafe she walked to was a place she knew well. Maple and Steam. A small corner place with warm lights, wooden chairs, and the smell of roasted coffee that always felt like home. She didn't choose the place for any special reason, just felt safe. When she pushed open the door, the bell above it chimed softly. The warmth hit her immediately. And so did the subtle murmur of conversations, the clinking of cups, and the quiet music playing in the background. It was the kind of place where people came to think, to breathe, or to escape their own silence. Emily scanned the room for an empty seat, but something stopped her. It wasn't dramatic, just a moment where she noticed a man sitting alone near the window. He wasn't doing anything unusual. Just looked up at the same time she looked his way, and their eyes met for a second longer than strangers normally. His face wasn't striking in a bold way, but something about him looked kind. His eyes were soft, tired in a way she understood all too well, and his posture carried a quiet heaviness, like he had spent the day pretending to be stronger than he felt. She didn't know why she walked toward him. She wasn't the kind of person who approached strangers. But tonight, her steps had their own direction. "Is this seat taken?" she asked. The man blinked, surprised, as if he hadn't expected anyone to speak to him. Then he smiled slow, gentle, warm. "No, you can sit," he said. He sat across from him, setting her bag beside her. She didn't know his name yet, but the silence between them felt strangely comfortable. People around them were busy with their own stories, typing on laptops, talking to friends, sipping warm drinks. But for Emily, the world seemed to shrink to this small table by the window. After a moment, she spoke again. "Long day." He chuckled softly, a tired sound that somehow made her heart feel lighter. "A long week," he admitted. "I'm Nathan, by the way. Nathan Hale." She introduced herself, and just like that, a conversation began. It wasn't forced, dramatic. It was two people talking because they needed to talk. Nathan told her he was an architect, someone who spent hours trying to create things that stood firm, even when he didn't always feel that way himself. He talked about a long relationship that ended months ago, a relationship he tried to hold together until it exhausted him. He didn't sound bitter, just worn out, like someone who had tried too hard for too long. Emily listened quietly, not judging, not interrupting, just being present. She wasn't usually open with strangers, but something about Nathan's honesty made her trust him. She shared pieces of her own life, how she worked at a publishing office, how she loved stories but struggled to make her own life feel meaningful. How she sometimes felt stuck in routines she didn't choose, but kept repeating anyway. Nathan listened with genuine interest. He didn't offer solutions, just understanding. And that was more valuable than advice. The minutes moved fast. Their conversation flowed like they had known each other for years. At one point, they laughed about something small Emily didn't. even remember what it was, but the laughter felt grounding. It reminded her she could still feel light even when her heart felt heavy. The cafe grew quieter as the evening went on. A few people left, chairs scraping gently against the floor. The barista wiped the counter. Soft music drifted through the air. Emily noticed Nathan looking at her with a thoughtful expression, as if he wanted to say something but wasn't sure. "He should what?" she asked softly. He shook his head with a smile that didn't quite hide the longing in his eyes. "Nothing. Just thank you. I didn't expect to talk to anyone tonight. I didn't expect it to feel this easy." Emily's chest warmed. She felt the same. But she also felt something else, a pull, a sense that this moment mattered in a way she couldn't fully understand yet. Still, she wasn't looking for something deeper. Not yet. The night wasn't about romance or promises. It was about connection. Honest, gentle, and unexpected. When she finally stood up to leave, Nathan looked disappointed for a second, then quickly masked it with another polite smile. "Maybe. I'll see you here again," he said. "Maybe," she replied, though something in her voice made it sound more like a promise than a possibility. She stepped out of the cafe, letting the door close behind her, and the cold air met her again. But this time it didn't feel sharp. It felt refreshing, as if her heart had taken a breath it didn't know it needed. Emily didn't know her night was far from over. She didn't know 2 more strangers were waiting on her path, or that each one would show her something new about herself. She only knew that the quiet ache inside her felt slightly lighter than before, and that the night had only just started to unfold. Emily walked away from the cafe with a strange warmth resting in her chest. She didn't know why talking to Nathan had felt so natural. Maybe because he understood sadness without turning it into drama. Maybe because he smiled like someone who forgot how to smile and suddenly remembered again. Or maybe because it had been a long time since anyone listened to her without rushing. Whatever the reason, she felt lighter as she stepped into the cold night. But she also felt something. Elle's curiosity. She wondered if meeting Nathan was just coincidence or the beginning of something. She didn't yet have the courage to imagine, but the night wasn't finished with her inside the cafe. Nathan stayed seated for a moment after she left, watching the door as if he expected her to return. When she didn't, he exhaled slowly and looked down at his hands. His fingers were slightly tense, the way they always were when he was trying to stop himself from thinking too much. He had come to the cafe expecting nothing, just a quiet corner to rest his mind. Instead, he ended up talking to a stranger, who made him feel more understood than people he had known for years. He wasn't ready for the feelings that stirred inside him. He wasn't even sure what they were: hope, maybe, or fear, or both. But he was certain of one thing. Emily had walked in while he was trying to piece himself back together. And somehow she made him forget the cracks for a little while. Emily didn't know any of this, of course. She was already walking down the sidewalk, her breath turning into small clouds in the cold air. Her steps were quick, almost eager, as if she wanted to hold on to the warmth she felt inside before the night tried to take it away again. Nathan, meanwhile, finally stood up, put on his coat, and left the cafe himself. He walked in the opposite direction, trying to clear his mind. The city lights blurred slightly as he walked, not because he was emotional, but because he was tired in a way that went deeper than his muscles. His breakup months ago had drained him more than he admitted to anyone he had shared his life with. Someone for 5 years, someone he thought would stay forever. But love had slipped away slowly, quietly, leaving him with an emptiness he didn't know how to fix. He wasn't heartbroken anymore. Not exactly. He was just uncertain. About the future, about whether he deserved something better, about whether he still had the ability to connect with someone without holding back. Meeting Emily felt like the world tapping him on the shoulder, saying, "You're allowed to feel again," but feelings made him cautious. Across the street, couple laughed together, pulling each other closer against the cold. Nathan watched them. For a second, not with envy, but with a soft ache. He used to be like that, open, hopeful, sure of the person walking beside him. Now he walked alone, and the silence sometimes felt too loud. He reached the corner and paused. Emily's face flashed in his mind not because she was beautiful, though she was, but because she looked at him like he mattered, like she saw the tiredness in his eyes and didn't turn away. That kind of moment was rare, gentle, almost fragile. He wondered if she felt the same connection he did, or if it was just a small moment for her, soon to be forgotten. He hoped it wasn't forgotten as Emily continued walking through the city. She replayed pieces of her conversation with Nathan, his voice, his honesty. The quiet pause before he spoke, as if measuring his words to avoid saying something untrue. She admired that. She liked people who spoke with intention. It felt safe, but she also sensed something else in him, a sadness that hadn't healed. She could feel it in the way he looked at the table when talking about his past, in the way he forced a smile to reassure her he was okay, in the slight tremor of his voice when he talked about losing himself in a long relationship. Emily understood that feeling too well. She had been through something similar a year ago. A relationship that faded slowly until she felt more alone with someone than she did without him. She hadn't told Nathan that, but she had recognized the signs in him instantly. Pain recognizes pain. Maybe that was why she sat with him without hesitation. He felt familiar. Nathan reached a small bridge overlooking a quiet river. The city lights reflected across the water like scattered stars. He stood there for a long moment, leaning on the railing, letting the night cool his thoughts. He wasn't trying to forget Emily. He was trying to understand why such a short meeting had stirred something inside him that he thought he wasn't ready to feel. But life doesn't always wait for readiness. Emily reached the edge of the block and stopped near a bus stop. Oh, she wasn't taking a bus. She just needed a moment to breathe. She felt grateful she had gone out tonight. Staying in her apartment would have meant sinking deeper into her thoughts. But instead, she met someone who reminded her that connections still existed, even when she wasn't looking for it. She wondered if Nathan was still thinking about their conversation. Something told her he was. Nathan finally pushed off the railing and continued walking. When he reached the next street, he stopped again, debating whether to turn back to the cafe, half hoping Emily might return. But he didn't. He wasn't the type to chase something without being sure it was meant for him. Instead, he walked toward home, carrying the quiet memory of a stranger who made him feel lighter as he walked. He felt a small shift inside him, not a big change, not a dramatic realization, just a subtle feeling that maybe things could get better. Maybe not tonight, maybe not tomorrow, but soon. Because sometimes all it takes is meeting one person who listens without judgment, who talks without rushing, who shows up without expecting anything. Emily had been that person for him, even if she didn't know it. Emily, unaware of his thoughts, continued walking through the cold night. She didn't know that Nathan's presence would echo in her heart long after the moment passed. She didn't know he would return into her life again. She didn't know the night had more surprises waiting for her. She only knew that meeting Nathan had changed her mood, shifted her heart, and opened a door inside her she thought had been closed. And as she walked into the next part of her night, she didn't realize she was about to meet someone completely different. Someone with a spark that would challenge everything she felt so far. The night wasn't done shaping her story. It had barely begun. Emily moved through the quiet streets with her hands tucked into her coat pockets, trying to hold on to the unusual peace she felt after leaving the cafe. She had expected a lonely night, but instead she found a conversation that made her heart feel less heavy. Still, the cold wind reminded her that the night wasn't over, and neither were the thoughts running through her mind. She walked faster, hoping the movement would keep her warm, when suddenly she turned a corner and almost collided with someone. A hand steadied her before she could fall. "Whoa, got you." The voice was warm, confident, and a bit playful. She stepped back quickly and looked up. The man standing in front of her had a guitar strapped to his back, a wool beanie pulled low on his head. and eyes that sparkled with a kind of restless energy. He looked like someone who had stories written all over him. "Even if he hadn't spoken yet, I'm so sorry," Emily said, catching her breath. "I wasn't watching where I was going." "It's okay," the man replied with an easy smile. "Happens to me all the time. I'm Liam." His voice had a charm that made his name feel like a melody. He looked like someone who never stayed in the same place too long. Someone who lived in moments rather than plans. Emily introduced herself, still a bit surprised by how suddenly their paths crossed. Liam didn't seem bothered at all. He stepped back just enough to give her space, but he didn't walk away. Instead, he studied her for a second, not in a rude way, but in a curious, thoughtful way. "You look like you're walking fast, too." "Escape something," he said lightly. Emily let out a small breath. "Maybe my thoughts," she said, not expecting to be so honest. Liam grinned. "Then you're in good company. I've been running from mine all evening." She couldn't help but laugh softly. Something about him felt refreshing, like a spark cutting through the cold. He wasn't quiet and heavy like Nathan. Liam was. Bright, lively, unpredictable. The kind of person who brought warmth into the night just by showing up. They started walking in the same direction without planning to. The city lights reflected on wet pavement, and the soft sound of Liam's guitar, case tapping against his leg, blended into the rhythm of their steps. Emily didn't ask where he was going, and he didn't ask her either. They just walked, feeling the night unfold naturally. "So, musician?" she asked, gesturing toward his guitar. "Yeah," Liam replied. "I travel a lot, playing small. Bars, coffee shops, on the streets sometimes." "I'm trying to find a place that feels right." Emily raised an eyebrow. "You don't have one already?" He shrugged. "I have places I stay in, but not places that feel like home. Not yet." There was something bittersweet in his voice, hope mixed with uncertainty. In that moment, Emily saw past his lively smile. She saw someone who carried dreams with both hands but wasn't sure where to set them down. She understood that feeling, more than she expected. "What about you?" Liam asked. "You look like you belong here." Emily hesitated. "I live here, yes. But I don't always feel like I belong. Sometimes I feel like I'm standing still while everyone else moves on." Liam nodded, as if he had been waiting to hear something honest. "Standing still isn't always bad," he said. "But staying stuck is, hey." His words hit her in a way she didn't expect. They were simple, but they touched something deep, something she didn't like to admit. She had been stuck emotionally, mentally, quietly. She had been living carefully, almost too carefully, afraid of new things because old things had hurt. Her Liam walked beside her like he had known her long enough to say these things. Even though they had only spoken for a few minutes. "You look like someone who cares a lot," he said softly. "Maybe too much." Emily blinked, surprised by how accurately he read her. "Is that good or bad?" "Both," he said with a small grin. "Good because it makes you human. Bad because it makes life heavier." She didn't have an answer, but she appreciated that he understood her without needing details. They reached a street where small shops lined the sidewalk, most of them closed for the night. The wind pushed past them, making Emily shiver slightly. Liam noticed and adjusted his pace, so she walked on the side, shielded from most of the wind. It was a simple gesture, but it felt thoughtful, proof that he cared, even in small moments. "You don't seem like someone who's afraid of the night," Emily said. Watching him casually kick a small pebble along the sidewalk, Liam chuckled. "Nights are quieter. People are more honest with themselves when the world calms down." "Like that?" Emily nodded. She had always felt the same, though she never said it out loud. The night was when her thoughts felt real, unfiltered. They kept walking until they reached a crossing. The traffic light blinked red, and the street around them was almost empty. Emily could feel the cold biting at her fingers, but talking to Liam distracted her enough that she didn't mind. She watched him for a moment, noticing the calm confidence in his posture. He seemed like someone who had been through unpredictable days and survived each one with a smile. The light changed to green. Before crossing, Liam turned to her. "You know," he said softly, "you have one of those faces. The kind that looks like it's carrying stories you haven't told yet." Emily felt her cheeks warm at his words. Not in a romantic way, exactly, but in a way that made her feel seen, noticed, understood. "Maybe I'm just trying to write new ones," she said. Liam smiled at that, Trilly smiled, like he liked the way she thought. As they reached the other side of the street, Liam stopped walking. She stopped too, confused for a moment. "I go this way," he said, pointing down a quiet side street. "Late night rehearsal." Emily nodded, even though she felt an unexpected tug of disappointment. She had enjoyed his company far more than she expected. Liam had a way of bringing lightness into heavy conversations, of making serious things feel manageable before leaving. He looked at her with soft eyes. "I hope you find whatever you're looking for tonight." Emily opened her mouth to say something in return, but the words didn't come. She didn't even know what she was looking for. Liam gave her one last smile, then walked away, his guitar case bouncing gently with each step. She watched him disappear into the dimly lit street, feeling the cold return to the air around her, yet inside something warm lingered. Nathan had made her feel understood. Liam made her feel alive, to strangers. In one night, each revealing a different part of her heart she had forgotten. She didn't know if she would see Liam again. But his words stayed with her long after he vanished into the night. Emily took a deep breath and continued walking toward home. Unaware that the night wasn't finished with her yet, another stranger was waiting, someone she already knew, yet never truly noticed. The night still had one more story to unfold. Emily walked the final stretch toward her apartment building, her steps slower now. The night had given her more than she expected: connection, comfort, and two moments that felt strangely meaningful. First with Nathan, the soft-hearted man, trying to rebuild himself. Then with Liam, the wandering musician who carried hope in his smile. She felt full and empty all at once, warmed by the conversations, yet overwhelmed by how unexpectedly the night had unfolded. As she reached her building, she pulled her scarf tighter, wishing the warmth inside her heart could push away the cold settling on her skin. When she looked up the front steps, she stopped. Someone was sitting there. Her first thought was concern. It was late, the air was freezing, and no one usually lingered outside this building at this hour. But as she came closer, the shadows lifted just enough for her to recognize the person sitting alone with his elbows on his knees and his hands clasped. It was Daniel Reed, her neighbor from the third floor. Daniel was the man she ran into in the hallway sometimes, the one who always held the elevator door without being asked, the one who nodded politely but never talked unless spoken to, the quiet neighbor with soft eyes and careful gestures. He wasn't mysterious. He was simply reserved, gentle, private, almost invisible in how he moved through the building. Emily had seen him dozens of times, but knew almost nothing about him. Tonight, he looked different. He looked lost in thought. When he heard her footsteps, Daniel straightened quickly. "Oh, Melly," he said, pushing his glasses up the bridge of his nose. "Sorry, I didn't mean to sit right in your way." Emily shook her head. "You're fine. Are you okay?" Daniel hesitated. He wasn't someone who opened up easily. She could tell by the way his shoulders stiffened, as if deciding whether he should pretend everything was fine. But maybe the night had softened him. The way it had softened her. He let out a quiet breath. "Just needed some air," he said. "Couldn't sleep." Emily stepped onto the first stair and sat beside him, leaving a respectful space between them. The cold cement pressed through her coat, but she didn't mind. "What's keeping you awake?" she asked softly. Daniel stared at his hands before answering. "It's silly," he said. "Just loneliness, I guess." Emily didn't expect that honesty, not from him. He had always seemed so composed, the kind of person who stayed calm even when storms hit. Hearing him admit loneliness made her chest ache. "I get that," she whispered. "More than you know." Daniel looked at her slowly, studying her expression as if trying to understand the weight behind her words. I didn't think someone like you ever felt that way. Emily raised an eyebrow. Someone like me? Daniel's cheeks warmed slightly, embarrassed by how that sounded. I mean, you're kind, friendly, easy to talk to. You seem like someone who has people around who care. Emily gave a soft, sad smile. Everyone has lonely moments, even the people who look okay from the outside. Daniel nodded, absorbing her words. The silence between them didn't feel uncomfortable. It felt honest in a way that didn't need explanations. He looked up at the night sky, where a few faint stars peeked through the clouds. Sometimes I feel invisible, he admitted quietly. Not in a dramatic way. Just like people see past me. It's like I'm always in the background. He paused. It makes it hard to reach out. Emily felt something shift inside her. She had never thought of Daniel as invisible. She always noticed him the way he offered quiet kindness without expecting anything. The way he kept the door open for everyone, the way he moved gently, almost thoughtfully. You're not invisible, she said firmly. Not at all. Daniel looked at her, his eyes warm in a fragile kind of way. Thank you. That means more than you think. The wind brushed past them, rustling the bare branches of a nearby tree. Emily wrapped her arms tighter around herself, and Daniel noticed immediately. Are you cold? He asked. A little. She admitted with a small laugh. Daniel stood and held out a hand to help her up, not forcefully, just politely, offering support she didn't have to take. She placed her hand in his, feeling the warmth in his touch, surprising for someone who always seemed guarded. He gently helped her stand, and when she was steady, he let go instantly, respectful and careful. Want to sit inside the lobby for a minute? He asked. It's warmer there? Emily nodded, and they stepped inside. The lobby wasn't decorated much, just a few chairs and a table with an old plant, but the warmth felt comforting. Daniel sat across from her, his posture still a little rigid, as if emotions were things he wasn't used to handling in public, but talking to him felt natural. Far more natural than she expected. They spoke quietly, as though afraid of waking the building. Daniel told her small pieces of his life, how he worked remotely as a data analyst, how he had moved to Portland 2 years ago, how he hadn't made many friends because he didn't know how to start conversations. He wasn't lonely because he lacked kindness. He was lonely because he lacked courage. Emily shared pieces of her night without mentioning the men she had met, but she spoke about the heaviness she felt earlier, the sense of being stuck, the quiet ache of wanting more. Out of life? Daniel listened without interrupting, without judging. His attention was gentle, not intense. She felt safe talking to him. People feel more than they show, Daniel said quietly. You included. Emily looked at him, surprised he noticed that. Maybe I hide too much. Maybe you're afraid of showing too much, he offered softly. His words landed deeper than she expected. There was no charm, no boldness, no daring spark like Liam, no tired longing like Nathan. Daniel's voice carried something different: stillness, understanding, kind of quiet truth that only someone who watched the world carefully could offer. The lobby lights flickered softly, and Emily felt a calmness settle in her chest. Daniel wasn't a stranger. He wasn't someone passing through. He was someone who had been quietly present all along, someone she had never truly seen until tonight. After a while, she stood up. She'd get some rest, she said gently. Daniel nodded, standing too. Yeah, me too. They walked to the elevator together, their steps soft against the floor. When the elevator doors opened, he let her step in first. Before the doors closed, Daniel spoke again, his voice a little uncertain. I'm glad you came home when you did, he said. Emily smiled, warm, sincere, touched. Me too. The doors closed between them, but the warmth stayed with her. Inside the elevator, she leaned against the wall, feeling her heart shift in ways she didn't expect. Nathan had shown her understanding. Liam had shown her excitement. Daniel had shown her quiet connection. 3 men, 3 different emotions. One night that changed her. Emily didn't know what would come next. She didn't know who would return in her life or what part of her heart each one had awakened, but she knew this night meant something, something real, something she wasn't ready to forget. And deep inside, she sensed that this story wasn't closing. It was only turning a page.